That's so true. Like, what do you think about that video that was circulating a couple months ago of that lady who stuck her hand into the Retic's enclosure? Let's not talk about the enclosure, but the things leading up to the bite.
Yes, yeah. So that video did go viral across Facebook, and even non-reptile people were sending it to me. Like, did you see this? And yeah, it's funny because most people were like, "That's the wrong enclosure." We won't talk about the enclosure because clearly it looked like it was in some sort of medical setting. The people were wearing scrubs. It looked like maybe a rescue or anything. But this large snake, I don't know, maybe like a 12-foot retic, was in this
it looked
aquarium.
quite large.
Yeah, I'm sure most people have seen it. I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes so people can go see it if you haven't. But essentially you have this person walking up. You see the retic in the enclosure and he looks like, or he or she looks like he's in food mode. Like you can see just the way his head's moving. If you've spent any time around snakes, you know that character shift they have as soon as they smell or they think they're being fed. And you know,
even if you're not a snake person, you will basically know because you can see, why is the snake all of a sudden just coming at you?
Yes, yeah. So the snake is kind of coming up, and then she, of course, makes the mistake of reaching her hand out, and he just nails her whole arm, and it constricts her immediately. In her defense, she did stay really calm for the most part, but it was just a poor situation.
It wasn't the right move in any way whatsoever, because that snake definitely thought it was food time. And that being said, her bite was a lot worse because of it. Not just a defensive it was an aggressive bite because it was for food.
Yeah, it was a feeding response.
Exactly. It thought it was going to get some chow time, so it didn't want to let go.
Yeah, so you have this 12-foot constrictor or constricting your arm, and the blood is just basically pouring out because I'm sure, like now that I'm thinking about it, it must just squeeze the blood out of your arm and sort of like wringing out a cloth almost because their teeth are so sharp. And there's just...
Yeah, I can't remember... was it like the bite above or below where the coils were?
Yeah, I'd have to take another look at that because she was definitely bleeding.
I know, like sometimes if you have a tourniquet on and you pump your fist to like let the veins come out so you can get pricked by a needle. If you get pricked sometimes with the tourniquet on and you take the needle out, your blood can like squirt out because so much pressure builds up and it has nowhere to go.
Right. So as soon as there's a hole there, it comes out.
Yeah, that could be a possibility with like why it was spraying everywhere.
Yeah. So
because the snake was acting as its own tourniquet.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of those things where you wish she had a hook or something to give herself some distance. Like I would never, because that's clearly not her snake. That you can't trust a snake that you don't know. And I mean that's something that like non-reptile people will take a snake's head off if you say that. But that's not what I don't mean. Be afraid of it, but you just need to learn its body language. Okay, you see it. It's in a very small, awkward enclosure. It's probably a rescue. It's poking its head out. You can't trust that it wants to come out and just slither on the floor. You got to give it a tap.
No, it's not a puppy coming for a cuddle.
Yeah, exactly. And then maybe you could talk about, because we briefly talked about this months ago when we first saw it, about just how to remove the snake, because you had an experience yourself, and she made a crucial mistake with this snake, and maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah, so I was bitten by my 2.2 meter yellow anaconda. Totally my fault. She's a sweetheart of a snake. I know most yellow anacondas are insane snakes and a little bit feisty, but she's a gem. She's a sweetheart. I had just fed her and all the other snakes in the room, and stupid me decides to like push her head back in the enclosure once she had swallowed everything, because I thought she would be full, but duh, snakes are opportunistic feeders. So she then, when I pushed her head back in, she was like, "Ooh, that smells like rat." So she bit me and coiled around my arm. Obviously, I was hysterical at that point because it was quite amusing that I had made such a stupid mistake like that, because I do know better. But because she thought it was food, she was like really squeezing, and I can say that pressure is quite intense.
Yeah, so what does it feel like? Like, I'm sure the bite isn't hurting as much as the fact that you're like kind of on adrenaline, but how much pressure was around your arm?
It was a lot of pressure. It's like a really strong dude like a really, really strong dude with these massive sausage fingers or whatever squeezing your arm. So it was actually an incredible feeling to feel. Not that I would recommend you go out and do that, but what I did then was I always have like a jug of water in the reptile room for filling up water bowls or whatever, and I poured a bit of that on her, and that not immediately, but it made her like realize, okay, this isn't food. Once she was getting drenched in water, you kind of pour it down their throat. They won't drown with this, but then she decided on her own to let go, and then she uncoiled me. Oftentimes this won't actually work, so it's good to have like some sort of mouthwash or alcohol spray that you can just spray in their mouth, and then they will let go instantly because they don't like the taste. But I prefer not to do that, so I used the water and it worked. So if that doesn't work, use an alcohol rub spray or a hand sanitizer, and then that'll make them let go instantly.
Yeah, and essentially just the way their jaws and teeth are structured, the worst thing you can do is pull their head off.
Exactly. So don't just pull, because they have recurved teeth and that's going to rip you up. So either you wait for them to let go, or you kind of, like, as soon as I was bitten, I pushed my hand into her mouth, getting those needle teeth out, like unhooked, and then she will let go herself. Mm-hmm. So I necked her so she couldn't like pull back anymore. And then I pushed my hand into her throat. Sounds kind of like rough and mean, but then she did let go once I had poured the water over her.
Yeah, and that's what you have to do. I mean, or else you are just going to tear tissue, because their teeth are so thin, like they just are just like little razors. They slice through your skin, no problem.
Exactly, and you'll have quite a few lacerations from that. And I've even actually seen Retic bites that require loads of stitches. Like, don't get me wrong, a Retic that size could probably kill you if it got you by an artery, because you would bleed out so quickly.
Yeah, definitely. There's actually there was a story a few months, maybe like last month. It's not snake related, but it's the same concept of these recurved teeth. So in the lakes here, and I'm sure kind of everywhere in obviously the United States, and I think in Europe as well, there's these fish called pike. They're like a northern pike. But